All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, calling to order Historic Landmarks Commission, February 17th, 2021. Let's start with the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Heidi Ardell. Will begin the roll call. Chair Grunfein.
Here.
Vice Chair House.
I am here.
Commissioner Jordan.
Present.
Commissioner Drury.
Here.
Commissioner Edmonds. Here. Commissioner Lundvik. I believe he is still working on signing in. I just sent him an invitation, so hopefully he will be with us soon. Commissioner Mahan.
I believe he can be absent.
As well. Commissioner Manuel.
Here.
Commissioner Uli.
Here.
All right, that is all. Thank you.
All right. On to public comment. So item A, any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. So anyone from member of the public wishing to address the commission, please click on the green arrow hand icon and follow the instructions. Public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you are attending by webinar, please click the raise hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. We have a number of attendees in the audience right now, and I will go down the list, but while we wait for any more hands to be raised, I'd like to just confirm with Ms. Rydell whether we received any written public comment for general public correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, and to the chair and the rest of the commission. We did receive written correspondence for items not on today's agenda, and they were distributed to the commission prior to this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do see one hand raised. Sheila Lodge, I'm going to unmute you. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. All right, and you are unmuted, Ms. Lodge.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. I was going through some old files and came across a quote from my predecessor, Mayor David Schiffman. He said, "The Historic Landmarks Committee is the guardian of Santa Barbara's soul." I agree with him, and I want to thank you for all you do to protect Santa Barbara's historic resources and to maintain its architectural traditions. I also came across a letter to the editor I wrote in 2005 in response to one from a local architect who complained about El Pueblo Viejo, who said its restrictions stifle creativity. As evidence, he said there were only 2 buildings of excellence in EPV, the Arlington and Santa Barbara County Courthouse. I wrote back pointing out that architects can and do design buildings in whatever style they choose outside EPV. I asked where the buildings of excellence were outside El Pueblo Viejo. I waited and waited, but there was no response. There weren't any buildings of excellence outside EPD then. I know of none that has been built since. Creativity can still be expressed, even within guidelines. So I urge you to please stand firm and continue to guard Santa Barbara's soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lodge. All right. Do we have any other public comment?
Mr. Chair, there are no additional hands raised at this time, so we can move on to the next item.
All right. So with that, we'll close public comment and on to item B, approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of February 3rd, 2021. I have a motion.
So moved.
All right, Commissioner Drury. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Edmonds seconded. Okay, under discussion, any edits? Changes? We have perfect minutes. That's sounding pretty good. And we don't have Commissioner Lundvik on yet. So, all right. Well, if there's no edits, we'll go forward with it as submitted. So we'll do a roll call vote. Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Heidi Riddell. I'll start with the roll call vote. We'll begin with Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
thank you so much. Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahan, absent. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Chair Grumbine.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are on to item C, approval of the consent calendar for February 17th, 2021. So,
I move approval of the calendar.
all right, motion by Uli. Second. Second by Commissioner Gordon. All right, so Mr. Hamilton, would you like to get through it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item A on the consent calendar was 701 Chapala Street. And the motion was for project design approval for return to consent in 2 weeks for final approval with comments. And item B was 1806 Owen Conto Road. The motion was for project design approval for return to consent for final approval with comments. Item C, 1334 Anacapa Street. The motion was for project design approval and final approval with comments. Item D, 1032 Santa Barbara. The motion was for review after final, approval of review after final with a comment. And finally, item E, 530 State Street. The motion was for final approval as submitted. And the consent reviewers at today's meeting were Chair Grumbine and Commissioner Manuel.
All right, thank you for the summary. Is there any questions? We have a motion and a second, so under discussion, any questions about the consent calendar? All right, okay, so with that, let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Heidi Riddell. I'll begin the roll call vote. We'll start with Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lundbeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayhem, absent, Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Chair Grunbein.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, we are on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuance of withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. So, Mr. Hamilton or Ms. Hernandez, do we have any announcements? Other item discussion? Though I have one announcement. I'll be needing to step away at 4 p.m. for probably about half an hour. So hopefully we'll be all done by then. But if not, Vice Chair House has agreed to take over as chair for it. All right. Any other announcements?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Drury.
I need to leave by about 10 to 6.
All right. We'll definitely, hopefully, be done by then.
Hopefully so. Yes, thank you.
All right.
And Mr. Chair, staff does have one announcement.
Oh, yeah. All right, Mr. Hamilton.
There was an appeal received at the city clerk's office for the project, the West Side Paseos project. The appeal is for the decision to deny the project. And staff is currently working with the clerk's office on setting the date for that at city council, and we will be in touch when we have that date finalized.
Okay, thank you. And once we do, we can discuss how we'll represent that. All right. So, any other announcements or items along those lines before we go to subcommittee reports? All right. Let's go to subcommittee reports. Item E. Any subcommittee reports? Okay, well, I don't think I have anything either. So, all right, with that, we'll close item E, and we'll move on to historic structures report. Item 1, historic structures report for 1631 Paterna Road, and this is requesting acceptance of a Phase 1 historic structure sites report prepared by Post Hazeltine Associates. The report concluded that the house built in 1919 in the Tudor Revival style is eligible for listing as a City of Santa Barbara structure of merit and for listing as a historic resource at the state and national level. All right. So with that, do we have the applicant present? We are a little early, but.
I think Post Hazeltine, it has representatives here. And I did agree with the conclusions of the report that it met the criteria to be eligible as a structure of merit. But I'll let them present their conclusions.
Great, thank you. All
And
right.
Mr. Hazeltine, I just promoted you to a panelist, so you should be able to share your webcam and mic.
They must not be used to us running early.
And Mr. Hazeltine, are you able to hear us? I see that you've joined as a panelist, but I don't see that you're connected to audio or you have a webcam.
Okay, now is it working? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, it was just a glitch on our end.
Yeah.
So In summary, the house was built in 1919. It's in the period revival style, the sort of French Norman subset of the period revival. It's one of the earliest houses on Paterno Road, and it's part of an assemblage of period revival houses built between about 1919 and the early 1930s that are substantially intact. And it gains a further significance as a grouping because of the significant sandstone sort of street furniture in the way of retaining walls, steps, balustrades along the streets, and period street lights that form a cohesive.
Sorry, if I can cut in for a second there.
Yeah.
If you can, Mr. Bolton, if you could be scroll through as they go, I think that would be helpful as well, just in terms of some of the visualization. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So because of that, Pam and I concluded that the house was a significant historic resource at the structure of merit level, primarily not at the landmark level, because there have been alterations to the rear of the house. And so it's not a, let's call it a pristine example, but it has very good integrity. The architect is unknown. And you can see from the photos that the setting of the house is substantially intact. And a very good example of the landscape that characterizes the Upper Riviera area.
And one of the rare surviving examples of that type. Yeah, they're not very many built in that style. That sort of French Norman, which is inspired by after World War I, where people saw French Norman farmhouses in France that, they came back and, drew inspiration from that. But there are not very many examples in Santa Barbara.
And
Great.
we're happy to answer any questions from the commission regarding our conclusions or the house's architecture.
Okay. Great. Okay. Do you have anything else that you wanted to maybe talk about the back a little bit as well?
Sure. It's rather interesting on the back because we believe that originally the ground level, which is kind of like, it's not a basement, but sort of like a large crawl space basement area, was originally a garage. There are period photos that we have in the report showing a driveway going up around the back of the property to the back end of the house. In the 1960s, we believe a porch was added to the west end of the south elevation, which is the rear of the house. And that addition is not in the architectural style of the house. And it was at that time that the metal frame windows were added at that end of the building on the rear elevation in the area of the kitchen. But with the exception of that area of change on the back of the building, the front is very intact and appears to have undergone no substantial alterations since its construction.
Great. Okay. Does that pretty much wrap up your presentation? Are the
Yes.
surfboards historic?
Pardon?
Were the surfboards historic?
Oh, the surfboards.
Yeah.
That's a decision we'll leave to the commission.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So if that concludes your presentation, thank you, Mr. Bolton, for flipping through as we're going along here. If that concludes your presentation, let's open public comment. So any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, please click on the green arrow hand icon to raise your hand, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you are attending by webinar and would like to give public comment on this item, please click the green hand icon, or the raise hand icon rather, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak once staff calls on you. And while we wait for hands to raise, Ms. Rydell, did we receive any written correspondence regarding this item?
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And to the chair and the rest of the commission, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Riddell. And I do see a number of attendees in the audience, but we don't have any hands raised at this point. So back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, we'll bring it back to the commission and for questions about the report. Commissioner Uli.
I'd like to ask staff if the owner has read this report, what their impression of it is, and if they agree with the conclusions.
I that way you would have to ask the applicant if they've presented it to their client.
All right, I'll pose that question to the applicant.
Yes, the report was submitted and reviewed by the owner, property owner, and the architect for the project.
Did they agree with the conclusions? Are they supportive of the conclusions?
Well, they did not communicate to
They
us
were disagreed with us, no.
that they disagreed with us, no.
That's a good neutral
Okay.
answer.
All right, other questions from the commission on the report? All right, in that case, we'll go into comments in the report.
I'll lead off since.
All right,
everyone's
Commissioner Uli.
My first comment is on page 42.
Okay,
Just
can you go there, Mr. Bolton?
as a matter of record.
Sorry, page 42, as in the number page 42 on the PDF, or the 42nd page of the PDF?
Page 42.
We have- Okay,
I don't know what page it is within the PDF. This one.
got it, okay.
All right, so the list of properties, 1731, 1704, 1807. 1731, that's known as the Lloyd R. Macy House, and it was done in 1917. And the architect is correct. Just a matter of finality of the note. In general, I found the report, as is typical of post-Hazeltine, excellent, well-researched, and well-written. But unfortunately, I'm reluctant to accept the report because it's going to shackle the owner with burdens in the future. If they, every time they want to do something to this particular property, they're going to have to come before HLC. We had a similar case with another project where the conclusion was that the house was important, and we didn't want to shackle that owner with undue burdens either. I think it's a really charming house. It's a really charming neighborhood. And while I support the conclusions of the report that there might be some historic importance, primarily because I think this is one of few building types like this in the city. But I'm reluctant to burden the owner with undue regulation.
Okay, Ms. Hernandez, did you want
Yeah, I just did want to really encourage you all just to look at the evidence of the report, because this is a CEQA document. We're here just to look at the evidence. Does this qualify based on their conclusions or not about future projects and what that would do? But that's a CEQA, our thing.
I totally get it. I totally get it. But my opinion is, as a CEQA document, if we accept this report, the next item is to designate the parcel. It potentially puts this particular landowner, like many, there are no other buildings that I can tell that are listed around this will be an island in a sense. Anyway, you've heard my opinion about it.
Okay. Well, along those lines, I'll jump in and throw in my 2 cents of it. I do think that, I think on the one that we had previously, with Post Hazeltine, where we just agreed with their conclusion, I would say in that case, it was much more of a gray area of whether it rose to that level or not, and it wasn't in the prime of their of the architect's career or what they're were known for. So that was also, so it seemed like there was other arguments that made it weaker, and so classifying it as a historic resource was a little bit more burdensome in the sense that it's not even, it was barely making, if it did cross that barrier, it barely made it across that threshold, or it didn't. So it seemed like it was more of a gray area. In this case, I think that it's very clear that it is rises to that level. And I do think that as opposed to when we are designating things that don't have a project in front of them, anything with potential will still come to us no matter what. So in that case, it's kind of burdened with this thing. It's because it has to come before HLC and still meet the standards that as if it were, even if it's not necessarily designated. So I think that when projects are coming before us, that is the time where we have to make the decision: is it in or is it out? And as opposed to designating preemptively. And I think that this kind of is it in or is it out has to be decided because now they want to do something to it. And so making a sort of an analysis and just judging it based on what we find it seems to me like the right thing to do on that end. And it's been consistent with the way we've treated all projects in the past. Commissioner Edmonds.
Thank you. I have a different opinion. I live in an older neighborhood, and so many of the homes, when they were not protected, have been changed, and it's just a huge loss. And so I think just the opposite, that they should be protected for the future, so that they continue to have the charm and quality that we don't always see today. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so with that, let's talk about the report itself.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drury.
Leap in here. Well, since the commission is composed of reasonable people, and we do have a protective status in the city, I think that we should continue to protect. And I think that we're also not just intelligent and reasonable, but amenable to appropriate modifications. I think that we should go on that basis. Thank you.
I thought you were going to go that we're also good looking, but if you're just going to go reasonable, then okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. And we're all very good looking. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So to the report in front of us. So additional comments on the report. I as well found it was an excellent report, and I for one agree with the conclusions of the report. Commissioner Jordan, did you have anything as being architecture historian as well? Did you have any?
I thought the report was excellent. I thought the house has some integrity and value. And I'll also say that as I look at this agenda, right now we're simply considering whether to accept the report, and that designating it would be a separate step, so that I would be open to hearing from the homeowners if they had serious reservations. Having heard none, I'm inclined to move ahead with this agenda.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Any other comments? All right. So in that case, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Willing to make a motion? Mr. House.
Motion to accept the report as submitted.
All right.
I'll second that,
Second.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Drury seconding it. All right. Under discussion. Any discussion? All right. In that case, let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin the roll call vote. We'll start with Commissioner Manuel.
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik.
Yes.
Mr. House.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahan, absent. Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli, sorry, Commissioner Uli, we're hearing some background noise. If you're not speaking, please remember to turn or mute your microphone so we can hear everyone. Thank you so much. Commissioner Uli.
So for me,
I'm still having trouble hearing you, Commissioner Uli.
Yeah.
I can hear you now. Can you just get your vote again?
no.
No. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
the motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. With that, we will move on to item 2, 1631 Paterno Road, resolution of intention. So pursuant to our code, the commission is requested to adopt a resolution of intention to hold public hearing on May 12th, 2021 to consider designation of the 1919 Tudor Revival South residence located at 1631 Paterno Street as a structure of merit. All right, so with that, this is just to hold the hearing for it. Would someone like to make a motion for the resolution of intention? Or I guess we should open public comment first. Let's open public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item, resolution of intention to hold public hearing, please click on the green arrow hand icon and you'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you are attending by webinar, please click the raise hand icon as Chair Grumbine indicated if you'd like to speak on this item. And while we wait for any hands to raise, I'd like to confirm with Ms. Rydell whether we received any written correspondence on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. To the chair and the rest of the commission, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And seeing no hands raised in the attendees list, I believe we can move on to questions from the commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hamilton. All right, so we are on to, we're back to the commission for any questions or comments.
Mr. Chair,
All right, Commissioner or Vice Chair House.
seeing as it doesn't appear there are any questions or comments, I will make a motion to adopt a resolution of intention to hold a public hearing on May 12th, 2021 to consider designation of 1631 Paterno Road as a structure of merit.
I'll second that.
All right, Commissioner Edmonds seconded it. And under discussion, any discussion?
And Mr. Chair, sorry for the
Mr. Hamilton.
interruption. Sorry for the interruption. I think we do have a member of the public who would like to comment. There's a little bit of confusion with GoToWebinar there. So
Okay, that sounds
your
good. So
discretion.
we will hold the vote and go back into public comment.
Table the motion.
Item. Table the motion. And we'll go back into public comment for it, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak, and whenever you're ready.
Okay, and Mr. Henson, let's see here. I apologize, I'm trying to find you in the attendees list. I believe you are a panelist, so you can go ahead and speak if you would like. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Yeah, I'm
Go
Tom
ahead.
Henson. Ready? Tom Henson from Becker Henson Nixto Architects. The owners hired us to look at their house to see if we could unravel some of the strangeness on the interior of the house. The outside looks good, but the inside's very strange. There's no garage. And we've come up with a plan where we can make everything work, but it would require some alterations to the front of the house. So all other things being equal, the owners would probably prefer to not have it declared a structure of merit But if it is, we'd be happy to work with you to come up with some way to make the house work and also preserve the historic features of the house, and especially work with Post Hazeltine, which we do a lot, to come up with something that makes the house livable, but also preserves the character of the house. That's
Okay. All right. Well, you did all that comments in 1 minute. Thanks for saving us the extra minute. All right. Any other public comments?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any additional hands raised at this time, so we can move on. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Back
Mr.
to
Chair.
Ms. Hernandez.
Just to help the commission with some more information, that section of the municipal code requires that when you accept your structures report, you either have to add it to the potentials list or move to designate it. If you prefer, you can have the resolution of intention be as a potentials list. In the past few years, we've just gone to structures of merit at the pleasure of this commission because they each require a hearing and public noticing of the same sort. But it is your decision.
And just as a point of clarification on that, so does the language of the resolution of intention to hold a public hearing need to say right now what that is, whether it is for a structure of merit or a potential structure of merit, or does it have to choose now, or can it be as it's written here, and then when we actually have the hearing, we can choose whether we put it on the potentials list or on the actual structures merit list? You know what I mean? Do we have to say now?
You should say now if you want it on the potentials, add it to the potentials or as a structure of merit. You can change your motion to say you move to consider adding it to the potentials list or designating as a structure of merit. They both require 60-day notice. They both require a public hearing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Vice Chair House.
Notwithstanding the fact that it's 3 months until this hearing is scheduled, be all in favor of taking this a little step at a time and changing my motion to be a resolution of intention to place on the potential historic structures list, and then we can revisit the whole issue come the hearing in May.
All right, sounds good. And it would be to consider to put it on the potentials list, is right? All right.
Okay.
Yeah, because the motion itself is not to put it on the potentials list. Okay.
You're right.
All right. So with that change, is the seconder of the motion okay with that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Edmonds. All right, Commissioner Edmonds. All right. So with that, with the revised motion, any discussion? All right. So with that, let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin the roll call vote. We'll start with Commissioner Lundbeck.
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahan, absent. Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
No.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
Chair Grumby.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. So we are on to item 3, 429 Garden Street. This is public hearing to consider staff report and owner's request for removal from the potential historic resources list, as the building no longer retains historic integrity to meet the criteria to qualify as historic resource due to alterations of character defining features. All right. So Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This building has been on the potential historic resources list since 1978. That survey found that the building was likely constructed in 1875, but moved to this location on Garden in 1927. That report also said it was likely moved by the Herman family that used it as their family home, as their grocery store at the time was adjacent. I feel the building has lost the integrity of setting, as the street is now entirely commercial, lined with almost all commercial and industrial buildings, as well as it has really lost many of its character defining features. The original doors and windows have been removed and replaced by inappropriate vinyl windows and a modern stock door with a fan light. And I just found it does not retain the association with the Herman family and grocery store with the lost integrity of settings and materials. It can no longer convey the 1927 appearance when it was moved to this location. So because it does not retain integrity, I do not find that it could meet the criteria of the municipal code. And the owner had just found out it was on the potentials list since that time and requested that it be considered for removal. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have them or take your thoughts and comments.
All right, thank you. All right, so with that, let's go to public comments. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, please follow the instructions or click on the green arrow hand icon to raise your hand. You'll be called on to speak for 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you are attending by webinar and would like to give public comment on this item, please click the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel. And while we wait for any hands to be raised, I will just confirm with Ms. Rydell whether we received any written correspondence for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And for the chair and the rest of the commission, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And I don't see any hands raised at this point, Mr. Chair, so back to you.
All right, thank you. All right, to the commission for questions. Ms. Hernandez, any questions about it? All right. All right, in that case, let's go to comments.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair House.
Yes, I'll lead off. I would agree with the conclusion of our architectural historian and make a motion to remove this from the potential historic resources list.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second and under discussion. And also just in terms of being quick on the draw for it, I think it would be good to have a little more discussion before in terms of getting right out of the gate, even though I agree with you. I just want to make sure that we consider the comments first. But yeah, okay. So under discussion of the motion now. Is there anyone that doesn't agree that and wants to talk about why they think it should stay on the potential list?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Drury.
Well, I reluctantly agree with the report. I think it's a shame because it still retains a certain shape and character that fits 1875 Santa Barbara. And it's too bad that it's been sort of mauled a little bit architecturally, and it doesn't qualify anymore. I think these kinds of little things are a shame to lose. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think mauled a little bit is a good way of describing what's happened to the porch in the front and all around. Whatever happened to that vertical siding thing going on above. Yeah. Okay. So with that, if there's no other comments, let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin the roll call vote. We'll start with Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahan, absent. Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
Commissioner Edmonds.
Yes.
Commissioner Uli.
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik, Commissioner Lundvik, I believe you were muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Grunbein?
Yeah.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and now we're on to item 4, which is probably going to be a little bigger than most. And we are 5-10 minutes ahead of time. Commissioner Manuel?
I need to recuse myself for conflict of interest.
Okay. All right.
I will leave the
Thank you.
meeting.
And now that this is the last item, you're off scot-free. All right.
Have a good day.
All right, you too. Okay, so this is, are we, 10 minutes ahead? Are we okay to keep going?
Yes.
Mr. Chair and to the commission, yeah, it's fine to continue up to 15 minutes early on a scheduled time.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so item 4 is 20 East De La Guerra Street. So this is Plaza De La Guerra. It's a new item for concept review. So the Plaza De La Guerra revitalization project involves raising the entire plaza as well as De La Guerra Street between Anacapa Street and State Street to be level with the existing sidewalk. Proposed improvements including new landscaping, splash pads, restrooms, kiosks, arcade, stage, art nodes, lighting, and trash recycling. The 2011 Historic Structure Sites Report accepted by HLC found that Plaza De La Guerra is eligible for listing as a City of Santa Barbara landmark, eligible for listing in the California Register of Historic Resources, and eligible for listing as a significant cultural landscape in the National Register of Historic Places. Surrounding Plaza De La Guerra are City Hall and the California Pepper Tree, the News Press Building, Casa de la Guerra, and El Paseo, all designated city landmarks, and the La Placida Building, aka McKay Boston Building, that is designated structure of merit. This is for concept review. No final appealable actions will be taken at this hearing. All right, so we have the applicant. Great, and as we have on the timer here, you can, this is obviously a large and complex project. So we'll try, if you could, try to keep it to 15 minutes, but if necessary, we'll have some extra time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could wait on the timer, I'm just going to give a quick intro and then the presentation will begin. So I'm Kathy Kennedy, a case planner for the project. As you said, this is the first concept review for this new proposal. Wanted to let you know that the Historic Landmarks Commission is the approving body for this project. So it's not going to Planning Commission or Council. It's just staying here at HLC. And the agenda did include the 2011 Historic Sites Structures Report for your reference, if you were able to pull that up and look at it. So that's available for reference. And then since it's a city project, we have, thank you, we have public works staff and our consultants presenting the project today. And also Nicole Hernandez is available still if there are any questions about historic resources in the area. So with that, we will turn this over to Brad Hess. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Grunbein and commissioners. Appreciate the time. Thank you in advance for that, and we're looking forward to receiving your feedback after our presentation today. Next slide, please. So here's our brief agenda for the day. To start, I believe we can all agree that the plaza is a very special place in our city. So whether you refer to it as De La Guerra Plaza or Plaza De La Guerra, it has a history and many memories for those of us who grew up here in Santa Barbara. In 1853, Santa Barbara City Ordinance number 37 officially made De La Guerra Plaza the town square, but it had already been functioning that way for many years. As Richard Oglesby said in the introduction to the book Plaza De La Guerra Reconsidered, The plaza developed not only into a place of congregation for public ceremonies, entertainments, oratories, and the like, but also into a site for the erection of monuments, fountains, and other decorations. It was a place, in other words, in which to honor the past, celebrate the present, and speculate upon the future. And that's what we've been trying to do. So we have heard from our community throughout this process, with the most concentrated feedback being in the community workshop that was held on March 9th in 2019. The information gathered from that workshop, from dozens of meetings with individuals, community groups, businesses, and stakeholders, as well as the public comment received at the advisory committee meetings, has really served as a baseline for the design. It's encouraging that the vast majority are excited about revitalizing this space to be a true plaza that is pedestrian only, is a flexible space that can better facilitate what the plaza has done for 200 years, and will be a beautiful space that honors our history through art, landscape, and architecture. This concept plan is not finished. As we've worked with the advisory committee over this past 15 months, we've realized that there are many facets to this concept plan and so many variables we need to discuss. However, we've also learned that if we tried to show you and explain everything to you, we would not only run out of time quickly, but we wouldn't really be doing this project justice. So for this initial concept review, we want to stay at a pretty high level, so it's clear to you how the entire design team and the advisory committee have approached this important space, and then to get your feedback. But if there are specific ideas within this concept you'd like to explore, we'd be happy to elaborate. Next slide, please. So the advisory committee was formed to bring together the different boards and commissions that would need to have a voice and a seat at the table to help guide this design process. The advisory committee is made up of 2 members from City Council, Planning Commission, Parks and Recreation, Historic Landmarks Commission, and the executive director of the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. And over these past 9 meetings, beginning November 8th of 2019, the committee has worked its way through design ideas, prioritizing, visualizing, listening to each other, listening to the public comment, both written and from the meetings, and really allowing the design team to do what we hired them to do. And again, just to clarify, the purpose of the committee was to create a baseline concept design that would then proceed into the city's development application process, where this commission will be the governing body. It was in our 3rd meeting that we created a purpose statement to clarify why we are doing this. And it reads, De La Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. Excuse me. Each design or concept was filtered through this purpose statement to make sure it met the 5 vitalities. And this provided the committee with a strong reference point and really kept us on track. This is a really exciting and important project for our community, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on this concept plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leif McKay from RRM Design Group to continue with the presentation. And hopefully he's here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, I was still muted. Thanks, Brad, and good afternoon, commissioners. It's great to be here. We're very excited to share our design with you today. I'd like to start with a few slides that address the site context. As you heard, and as you're all very much aware, the site is steeped in historic resources, illustrated by this slide, and this really serves to show the amazing potential the plaza has to knit all these buildings and features together and really create a heart for the downtown. The 2011 Historic Structures and Sites Report provides clear direction on elements that absolutely must be preserved and those which could be considered for some kind of a change, including alteration or removal. And some of those are summarized on the right. We've been consulting with the authors of that report post-Hazeltine all throughout the process. Next slide, please. The plaza achieved its current configuration pretty much in 1925, with the notable post-1925 alterations being the demolition of the Abadi adobe around about 1945, and the addition of the News Press Tower feature in 1951. So because of that more recent designation of the News Press building, the period of significance ends in 1951. Next slide, please. Just a series of historical photos to show various features of the plaza, some of which remain today, some do not. For example, you can see the scalloped wall in the top right that's still there today behind the cafe patios, and the pair of Washingtonia palms at the bottom of your screen, one of which is still standing out in the grass. Several of these images were taken in the mid-20s, right around the time the plaza achieved its current configuration. Next slide, please. The plaza has been a subject of numerous design efforts really over the last 100 years or so, and some of these images here represent that all the way back to the 1920s, in fact. You might recognize some of these from the 2002 Design Symposium. We found it very interesting to see that there's some ideas that are recurring themes throughout, including the placement of a strong focal point at the south end near the News Press, and the idea of converting De La Guerra Street to a pedestrian thoroughfare. Next slide, please. I just included a couple of photos, drone photos that we took showing the current condition of the plaza. These were taken sort of in the fall last year, and they may serve some purpose during a discussion later if we want to come back and refer to anything. Next slide, please. You can see that the tallest palm there is one of the Washingtonias. Next slide, please. That's City Hall off to the right, as you know, and that's the News Press Tower at the bottom. And next slide, please. There's Casa de la Guerra on the left. Next slide, please. Our team explored a number of ideas leading up to the current concept. You can see some of the themes from previous designs coming through fairly clear. We did show some more contemporary solutions to the committee, mainly to provoke discussion and throw out some outside the box thinking, but we ultimately and quickly settled on a traditional form for the space reminiscent of classic European piazzas. Next slide, please. This is one of the early versions of the design showing how the main axes engage with the historic buildings at all the compass points. It's not quite true north, but for the purposes of today, we'll say the left of the screen is north. It's not quite that accurate, but north to the left. There's various points of access shown in the dark blue arrows, which emphasize sort of this key plaza design principle of centering, which is creating a space where paths cross and lead. And successful public plazas are places where people's lives intersect in unexpected ways, and results in a happy synergy, which is really what we're trying to foster here. Next slide, please. So this is the conceptual design that's the result of well over a year of work with the advisory committee. This overview helps to show how the plaza really can serve as the heart of the downtown in its unique setting. One of the most transformative aspects of the design is the closure of De La Guerra Street to daily through traffic. And in doing so, it's prioritizing people over cars. The segment between Casa de la Guerra and State Street at the bottom left there is shown to be converted into an extension of the plaza surface and would only have controlled vehicular access for authorised purposes. Excuse me. The Anacapa Street end is still somewhat in flux because just as we were about to do additional traffic studies just to see where people were coming and going, the pandemic hit, and so it's kind of on hold until there's a more normal pattern that we can look at. Before we move on, I just want to point out the two proposed trash pickup locations close to State Street, one on De La Guerra Street, kind of in front of Starbucks, and one in Stork Placita. We've been investigating the feasibility of below ground dumpster vaults at these locations to really minimize visual impacts of trash pick collection, which is a bit of a blight today along that edge, and we're quite excited about that potential. Next slide, please. So zooming into the main plaza area, you can immediately see it's an open hard surface space without the horseshoe road, although the geometry and the surface does pay subtle homage to that horseshoe. The surface is one uniform level from side to side and end to end, and the goal is to maximize its flexibility for a wide range and variety of events that currently take place and may happen in the future. There's a provision for vehicles to maneuver through, maintenance and event setup, things like that, but not daily traffic. Next slide, please. So let's walk through some of the main features. Well, starting in the middle, there's two large circles that really catch your eye. They're centered along the long axis. At the right is an interactive water feature, splash pad, which was a really popular idea that surfaced during our community outreach efforts. This would be installed flush with the pavement, so it could be utilized as just regular plaza space when the water was turned off. But when in operation, it would provide a destination for young families living or visiting downtown and draw positive activity through the space. The pattern in the circle takes some inspiration from Michelangelo's Campidoglio in Rome. Some permanent seating is provided at the edge for viewing and supervision. And we just think this is really important for the plaza because it needs to be more than just beautiful. In order to thrive, there needs to be reasons to visit and spend time. And this feature in conjunction with others will certainly help meet that goal. The circle to the left is earmarked for an art piece. This, along with art nodes I'll talk about in a second, will be the subject of a parallel process through the City and County's Office of Arts and Culture to create an inclusive and representative art and cultural subcommittee that will help oversee the art aspect of the plaza. At the bottom right in Stork Placita is a new public restroom building that'll also house mechanical equipment for the splash pad. The architecture of that building will be in character with the surrounding buildings tucked against the blank wall there. But the interior is likely to have high-tech self-cleaning, self-monitoring features. And then along the western edge at the bottom of the screen, we envision a street dining scene with accommodations for the existing restaurants to spill out past the scalloped wall to enliven the plaza edge. Shade would be provided by trees and umbrellas that could be moved or removed depending on the weather. The row of trees along that edge are in raised planters with a wall for casual seating. The series of smaller bronze-coloured circles that you can see are envisioned to be medallions embedded flush in the plaza. And they present another opportunity for art, perhaps with interpretive or historical themes. They could combine to tell a particular story or even create a timeline, for instance. And last but not least, at the top right is a new arcade structure. It sits at a slight angle that we believe aligns with the old adobe that flanked that edge. We really like the asymmetry of it because old spaces like this that develop over such a long time almost never have a perfect geometry. This feature serves several important functions that will contribute to the success of the space. Firstly, it helps to create a sense of space by enclosing the plaza and closing that gap, that missing tooth, if you will, that opens onto a parking lot. Secondly, it creates a backdrop for a new stage that changes the orientation of performances that are currently held out there to run across ways. It'll provide places for casual sitting and people watching, which is classic plaza behavior. And lastly, it'll formalize a gateway into the plaza from the parking lot. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. I realize the 15 minutes is up, so a couple more slides. This is an impression that our team drew of the new arcade. It's not connected to City Hall. It may appear that way in the sketch, but it's detached. You can see the rhythm of the arches is echoing City Hall, but the overall structure and ornamentation on it would be subordinate to City Hall, so it doesn't compete. It'll be relatively open as well, so the arches will frame long views to the mountains and hopefully screen a lot of the cars in the parking lot. Next slide, please. Here's some proposed materials, which we're really interested in your input on. In general, we're looking at earth tones, predominantly natural materials such as stone and clay. One suggestion brought forward in the committee, I believe it might have been by Commissioner Howes, that we really like is to continue the El Paseo paving out into the plaza to visually connect the adjoining spaces. The choice of paving materials needs to meet a number of criteria in addition to looking good. It's got to withstand vehicular loads. And in areas with subsurface utilities, we want to be able to remove it and replace it for maintenance and work on those utilities without it looking like a patchwork quilt when we're done. It'll be challenging, but critical. Next slide, please. And then some opportunities for accent materials. Tile work on the planter walls could add a pop of color and maybe some more artwork. Mosaics could pick up on historical motifs to frame focal points, and cast iron drain inlets can add just richness to the architectural quality. Next slide, please. 2 tree species from the EPV plant list are shown to complement the existing trees around the edge of the plaza. First one's the Palo Verde on the left, which has a beautiful branching form and a very light, lacy canopy. And the other is the eye-catching floss silk tree, which provides a stunning accent when it's in bloom. Next slide, please. Here's how they lay out in our plans. So the yellow is used to create the pleasant outdoor dining atmosphere. They're smaller and pedestrian scale that won't overwhelm the architecture or views of the scalloped wall. And then the pink dots show the floss silk trees being used to bookend the plaza, almost like exclamation points. Those trees bloom in spring and autumn respectively, so that they'll provide some seasonal interest. So that's it. Thanks for bearing with me. Sorry I ran a little long. I'll hand it over to Brad to wrap up.
All right. Thank you.
Just a brief thank you. And again, trying to dive into each of these design features would be way too time consuming, clearly, for this initial concept review. But we look forward to your feedback, and we know we'll be back in the near future. So thank you, and we're available for questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, so with that, let's go into public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, please click on the green arrow and raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you are attending by webinar and would like to give verbal public comment on this item, now is your opportunity. Please click the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak once staff calls on you. And while we wait for some hands to raise, I will confirm with Ms. Reddell whether we received any written correspondence for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, and to the chair and the rest of the commission. We did receive written correspondence on this item, and it was distributed to the commission prior to this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rydell. And I'll just go down the list here. It appears to be roughly in alphabetical order. So starting with Ann Peterson. Ann Peterson, I'm going to unmute you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And you'll need to click on your microphone and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Historic Landmarks Commission. The Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation is a committed stakeholder in the effort to revitalize Plaza de la Guerra. City Council invited the Trust to hold a seat on the Plaza Subcommittee because the organization owns and operates Casa de la Guerra, which anchors the north side of the plaza. As you know, the plaza itself is located on land that used to belong to the de la Guerra family. While today the plaza holds several commercial and civic buildings, at the time the plaza was residential and was ringed by the adobe homes of California families. At that time, the casa and the area that became the plaza were site to many weddings, feast days, and other community gatherings. The Trust is inspired by the potential for this project to restore the historical connection between the casa and the plaza. To this end, we support removing street parking from the front of the casa and ideally throughout the plaza and the entire block of De La Guerra Street. We also support the effort to visually connect the plaza and casa through a raised street surface and hardscaping that complements the casa courtyard. We support a plan in which the casa is positioned to be open to and connected to the community events and traditions that take place in the plaza and to continue to contribute to our city's cultural life. In my opinion, the proposed concept plan does all of these things, thereby restoring the historical connection and pride of place for Casa de la Guerra. Restoring that connection will strengthen the plaza by encouraging the community to draw inspiration and connection from that continuity of use. We acknowledge that the plan as proposed is a concept design. Many of the details will change as it undergoes review, and hopefully it will receive robust public input. We encourage the evolution of the design based on this outreach while holding strong to the desired outcomes we list above. While the buildings that ring the plaza were designed and built at the highest architectural level, the plaza itself remains unfinished despite dozens of plans created for the site by architects over the last 100 years. Let us be the generation that completes this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I see 2 more hands raised. So John Dorden and Mary Louise Days. I'll call on you in alpha order. So John Dorden, I'm going to unmute you. And you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine and Commissioners. My name is John Dorden, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. Also happen to be the new appointed Chair of the Historic Resources Committee. And rather than repeat what Ann Peterson has indicated, we simply want to say that the Board of Directors strongly supports what Ann Peterson has expressed and said, and that we will be following this as this concept design evolves. We also think that this is probably the right combination of interested parties and stakeholders and resources that echoes the comment that this should be the generation to complete this. So that's fine. We just simply endorse the comments from Ann Peterson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Louise Days, I'm going to unmute you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And go ahead, Mary Louise Days. You're going to need to click your microphone button in order to speak.
As a native Santa Barbaran and a lifelong resident, I am pleased to see the consideration given to the history of Plaza de la Guerra and to its relationship to Casa de la Guerra, as well as to other nearby city landmarks. The Casa and El Paseo are also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It is important to respect the heritage of the Casa and its proximity to the plaza. Some of the current plan's features could prove to be problems, such as the splash pad, a water feature that appears to be poorly located with regard to other features and may be little used to its full extent. The plaza is a civic gathering place. The arcade backing up to the City Hall parking lot calls for audience space for its entertainment performances. The splash pad could pose a problem there, and uses for the arcade could encounter awkward situations due to their location. During a recent meeting of the appointed committee for the plaza revitalization, I asked for details of plans to possibly relocate the California State Landmark plaque near De La Guerra Street, and for locations for history displays of the plaza area and surrounding buildings. No preliminary details were available at that time. Limited time was provided for public input during the committee process, but I did point out that the generous number of proposed new trees on the perimeter of the plaza could hamper views of the historic architecture surrounding it. I do notice that the almost 10-year-old historic structures report that was cited in your agenda item is not, of course, was not based on this project, but on an earlier general one where saving of the lawn or portions of it were included. And I also have spoken to many people who would like to see lawn area remain. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I don't see any additional hands raised, although there are a number of attendees. Once again, if you would like to speak on this item, please click the raise your hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel. And seeing no more hands being raised, Mr. Chair, I think we can return it to the commission for questions.
All right. Thank you. So back to the commission now for questions. So anyone want to start off with questions?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I'll ask the gentleman who ramrodded this project for us out on the committee for the revitalization of the plaza. I looked at this the size of the splash pad seems to be, I don't think it's grown, but it seems to me to be increasingly visually too big. I know, and as I understand that it's at ground level, is that correct? I think I'm asking the right people.
Right. So,
Mr. Hess?
To the applicant.
There you go. There's Leaf. Yeah, is that at ground level? That splash pad?
Yes, Commissioner.
I guess as a follow-up, do you have a visualization of an existing splash pad that's kind of similar, or in terms of understanding the obviously the pattern would be different, but the base material and the way in which they look and work?
I don't have that on me, but I can tell you the intent. It is at ground level, so when the water was turned off, it would be completely flat. There's no above ground physical elements, and it's designed to be sort of playful water that only comes up at 2 or 3 feet at the most. So it's, you know, in the scale of the plaza, we think it's not going to feel too large. And you know, in our experience, these types of features are very popular with families. So I think it needs to be of a certain size that can accommodate quite a lot of use through the summer.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have comments later. Thank you very much, Leaf. Pleasure. Thank you.
Commissioner Edmonds.
Thank you. We received several letters that talked about the trash collection point and the businesses that were, at least from, I shouldn't say several, at least 2 letters. And so I'm wondering if there was consideration of having multiple trash collection points versus just having one, and depending on the answer, I guess, why one and not several, because of the impact to these businesses.
Chair Grumbine, Commissioner Edmonds, thanks for that question, because it's something we saw those letters as well, and I think what's challenging is to help everyone understand what we're actually contemplating. As Leaf referred to in the presentation, we're contemplating an underground vault for the dumpsters, so that the only thing above ground would be what you would consider a normal trash receptacle, where you put the trash or recycling or food scraps into that receptacle, and then it drops down into a dumpster. And then once, twice a week, whatever is required, those dumpsters come up out of the ground in a vault, are removed and then replaced, and everything is flush with the road or with the existing surface. So the goal is to actually remove the blight, remove the above ground trash enclosures, and really just have receptacles that would make more sense for the space. The challenge also is that we will also have receptacles throughout the plaza for just normal everyday trash. What those underground trash enclosures are for are really for the surrounding businesses. So those would be used by the surrounding businesses with a card access. So it would only be allowed to be used by them. Otherwise, we're going to have a trash problem. That is what we're concluding. Does that make sense?
It does, and I appreciate that because, as we all know at Fiesta, I'm envisioning, at Fiesta that one trash collection spot would be, overwhelmed. So do you have photos that can show us what that would look like? Because, I'm just basing this question on the letters that were received and how it would affect those businesses.
Commissioner Edmonds, the challenge with this presentation is we're not sharing our screen. So everything that we wanted to reference today, unfortunately, we didn't bring pictures of everything, but we certainly want to share that with you. We do have pictures. We're working with a company for all the specifics so we can get that information to you, but we don't have that with us today. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I add something to that?
Vice Chair House.
Yeah, it's a big challenge and always has been because there are restaurants and they typically have just put their trash and food waste and recycled bins on the sidewalk outside their restaurants, which is unsightly. So there needs to be a place for them to deposit their garbage, and that's what these underground vaults accomplish. And there's not just one of them, there's two of them. The other one is in Stork Placida by where it says restrooms there. And I would imagine that this is something that by agreement with the restaurants, they're only hauling their trash out there early morning or late night, something like that. So it's not in the middle of the day that businesses are dumping their trash in these things. So I think it's less of an impact than it initially comes across, or it would sound from those letters. There might be better locations that could be found, but it needs to be as well convenient for Marburg when they're coming to pick up. So it's a huge challenge, but I think it's an interesting concept. So I think at a future review, we'll see more detail.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions at this stage. And first, let me say, I thought that the letters we received from the public were very thoughtful and demonstrated a real commitment. And I noticed that the News Press building anchors one end of the plaza. Has the News Press been involved in this, or have they demonstrated a similar level of commitment that the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation and some of the building owners have?
Again, Chair Grumbine, Commissioner Dorden, thank you very much for that. I have been in contact with both Wendy McCaw and Arthur, and the invitation has been consistent to be involved. I have sent them an invitation to every single, I believe every single advisory committee, requesting that if they would like to be part of the process, that they are more than welcome. We had initial meetings long ago, but once the advisory committee started, we didn't have any direct one-on-one meetings with them, but they have been invited to be part of the process from day one.
Okay, thank you. I have another question about, as I understand it, the plaza would be one level from across the entire expanse, which would involve raising De La Guerra Street, correct? And what I'm curious about is where that would begin, or how you would raise the level of De La Guerra Street. Where would that slope begin or end?
Commissioner Dorden, if you can picture De La Guerra Street, it is fairly bowed in the middle. So the top of the road actually is pretty close to the level of the curb. So for all intents and purposes, we'd probably just be filling in the sides. It would all be different material, of course, but that's basically where it would start. If you're looking for a reference point, we still need to have a stormwater management plan for this entire space. So dealing with water and how that's going to be sloped, how it'll be stored, where it'll go, all of those civil issues need to be figured out. And
that was my next question.
Yeah, the level of that surface will certainly play a part. And just to head off your next question, the unfortunate part about this plaza is that there is zero permeability in it. We did several tests and there's no chance for us to use permeable pavers in the traditional sense. So if we were to use pavers, it would be for aesthetics only, but we're gonna need to direct the water down toward the splash pad area. We will most likely need to do cisterns and tanks in order to store that water. And whether it's a series of pumps or able to use it for landscaping or we try to dry well, we'll see if we can do that. A lot of those questions are still outstanding at this point.
Okay, in the 21st century, a public space like this needs a kind of digital infrastructure as well as a physical one. Are there plans to have wireless availability across the plaza?
You ask a good question. I actually received an informational email from Cox today, and I'm in communication with our IT department. Those are topics that we absolutely want to see what we can do. It's part of the plan. Again, it's just premature at this point to tell you exactly how it'll be played out.
Okay. Some of the public comment raised questions about the choice of the floss silk tree, talking about damage to curbs and sidewalks, other places that tree has been used. What is the sense of why it would be a viable solution here and not create similar problems?
I think I might let our landscape architect answer that question. Leaf?
Yes, we would design with that in mind and have a pretty heavy duty curb below to get the roots down. You know, in many decades, there's a chance that those roots can work their way out. But we believe that we can design a robust enough installation to alleviate that concern.
Thank you.
All right. Other commissioners' questions? I'll throw out a few. First question was with the why Michelangelo, why the Campidoglio pattern?
Again, I'm going to let Leaf answer that question. That was his inspiration.
There's no amazing answer to that, Commissioner Grumbine. It's we were searching for some sort of motif for that area, and we did a lot of sort of pictorial searching, and we kept coming back to that because it seemed to suit this sort of Spanish colonial tradition and what we were trying to achieve, which was a statement piece back there. So I don't have a cleverer answer than that.
Okay, no, just checking to see if there was something particular about it. And then the other question was, one other question I had was looking at the stage, what were some of the considerations for both placement and then also here, this allows us to see it being very much disconnected from the from City Hall, but why the stage there? And yeah, what's the benefits and what's the sort of design idea and inspiration behind it?
Brad, would you like me to take that?
Why don't you go ahead and take that and I'll fill in.
So this was an idea that we had to try to, if you look at the plaza, it's quite long and narrow. And when there's a big stage set up, say backed up to the news press and facing towards the Casa, it's focused down the entire space. By rotating at 90 degrees, it almost creates sort of a the performance end of the plaza. That's kind of half of it, and it's not dominating the full plaza. So you could almost imagine it as being somewhat able to have two uses going on concurrently, like in a festival type of an atmosphere. We also really liked the way that it opens up the width of the viewing area. So it's shallower but wider. The restaurants on the other side seem to form a very harmonious relationship with the stage at the back. So you have people in the restaurant during a performance at the back of the audience. That was kind of the thinking. We ran it actually. We ran this idea pretty early past representatives of Fiesta, Old Spanish Days, and they immediately really liked the idea. The wheels started turning about ways they could reconfigure their event to match, but they really got excited. So we took that as a vote of confidence and we ran with it from there.
Okay. And then there was a public comment that brought up about historic, how historic plaques and other things that might be an opportunity to explore. And has there been any thoughts on those? And any thoughts on the history of the plaza being told in some way? Because of obviously the many things that have, the ways in which it has changed and the buildings that are there and sort of the very strong historic nature of the plaza itself.
So Chair Grumbine, I'll take this one if that's okay. The plaques there, and there are several throughout the plaza currently, will definitely have a place, and a place that is one of honor, of distinguish, and we want to make sure that those are done well. We do not have that level of plan yet. This is still in the concept phase in terms of where all the bigger pieces are going to go. But please rest assured that we are going to be very careful in terms of how those plaques and those monuments are positioned, and they'll have their special place for sure. We're just not there yet.
Okay. All right. And then one other question I had was the shape of, and this aerial shows a good shot of it, but the shape of the swoop on this end in De La Guerra Street. What's the thinking on that particular end in shape and the way in which it crosses the road, the semi-arch circle?
Yeah, I'll take that one. It's really what we were trying to do was in a spatial hierarchy, we wanted the plaza to read more prominent than sort of linearity of the street. So we were trying to break that linearity down De La Guerra by bringing the geometry of the plaza across it and sort of towards the casa. The specific shape of it you can see it's not an exact mirror of the other end, but it's close, and that was the reason.
Okay. I think that's it for my questions. Any other questions from the commission? The commissioners? All right. So with that, we'll go into comments now. So this is for concept review only right now. This is our first concept review. So why don't we start getting going on at least let's start first a discussion of some things that the commission is liking or not liking, or they see as lacking, or key areas of improvement, and be thinking in terms of big picture. And obviously this is a very, very beginning, or well, first time we've seen it in terms of concept review. And so perhaps giving some guidance of things to look at or things to particular areas to study would be really good. And I think the use of the word study is probably a good one in this case, especially because there might be multiple ideas that need to be tried out and kicked around, and so especially with particular things in mind. So, or particular areas and aspects like the splash pad or like the theater or the stage parts. So does kick us off with their initial reactions and points. Commissioner Lundvik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I glanced through the Historic Structures Report, and it identified the period of significance as 1853 to 1924. While that was for a prior project, the period of significance doesn't change. And I guess I should have asked this as a question. What part of this plaza design you have would you say is, and I'm not going to ask you, it's a rhetorical question. What is of that period of time? I don't think the splash pad is of that period of time, of the period of significance. And I think that's my biggest disappointment, is this seems to be a very contemporary plaza. When you look at the plazas in Europe, the Plaza Mayor in I don't know, San Sebastian, I'm just trying to think of places I've been. They are paved areas without significant relief throughout the body of the plaza. There may be a statue or whatever, but you don't have art nodes. You don't have all this kind of stuff going on, and to me this design, this concept, is not traditional in any way, shape, or form. I look at that at the Romanesque end of the paving outlines that are on both ends, and people walking down through the plaza are not going to understand that or recognize it or relate to it. Whereas if you look at a plaza in Europe, and you got a lot of paving patterns going on in here. If you look at a lot of the plazas in Europe, you'll find that there are maybe they have blocked them out into like 20-foot squares or 24-foot squares or whatever, with a border that is only a subtly different color than the main paving, and there's a real kind of unifying feature about that. I don't see a lot of unifying here. I don't know what art nodes, why they need to be. I don't know why an art focal point needs to be. I think artists are going to find the proper location for their work in the plaza without being told that we're going to expect you to go to 8 nodes and set up your easel or whatever. In particular, I find the splash pad to be very out of character for De la Guerra Plaza. It's modern. I mean, it's something like, there's a splash pad in Sparks, Nevada, outside the parking garage. Large lawn around it where the parents can sit and the kids can run in and out of the water. But this is not that. This is not, we don't need a modern thing here. And I think the splash pad is modern and unnecessary. The other thing that seems to me to be overlooked is the connection to Casa de la Guerra. Casa de la Guerra's plaza is decomposed granite. And now they've got a wall there for their protection and definition because De la Guerra Street is open. But wouldn't it be nice to have Casa de la Guerra's plaza reaching into De la Guerra Plaza in some way, shape, or form? Maybe the decomposed granite comes out, it's halfway across what would be De la Guerra Street or whatever. But there's that way to create some connection, real connection between the casa and the plaza, which theoretically it had originally, 150 years ago or whatever. And I think it's been ignored now. I don't see the accentuated color or change of color in paving to be anything which is an asset in the design of Plaza de la Guerra. The trees. I also think that the trees, which are a major feature, need to be something which would be more traditional. I don't know if silk oak or silk trees or whatever were traditional in 1924 or whatever the period of significance. But I do know that olive trees are, and I can't imagine a more beautiful tree than an olive tree. Oak trees are. I can't imagine a more beautiful tree than an oak tree in this plaza. And I'm not sure that color, while it would be desirable, I'm not sure that color in the trees is necessary in a traditional plaza. So those are my comments. I'm not pleased with what I see, and I certainly wouldn't want to have the designers walk away thinking that they've got this thing nailed with this design, because I don't think it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lendick. Vice Chair House, and then Commissioner Edmonds.
Well, I will start off by saying I share a lot of Commissioner Lendick's concerns, and I have from the outset of my joining this committee, which was late in the game. So a lot of this was already pretty well established. But I also realize, I mean, as I look at the paving patterns, they keep reminding me of a plaid or Argyle socks or something like that. But, you know, and I was of a similar mind that it's maybe way too complicated. It should be more organic and less structured and a simpler material palette. But while listening to the presentation, I thought, well, let me bring up pictures of Plaza Mayor in Madrid. And it's actually very similar. Now, of course, it's a much larger plaza, but, you know, we're not having the benefit of seeing what this looks like from ground level. And the nature of the rendering perhaps accentuates the contrast between some of these paving materials. I agree they should not stand out so much, and that should be a subtler distinction between things. But, you know, I'm trying to keep an open mind about the paving and the pattern. And I think we just need a better presentation of what these materials look like together. And yes, they may be simplified. As to the splash pad, I'm lukewarm on that as well. I don't have children, so, you know, it's not a place I'll be taking kids or a concern of mine. But I also appreciate that there's been a lot of public outreach on this. And I think we need buy-in from the public. So to the extent a splash pad was something that was requested by a lot of public, you know, I think I need to accept that there are some things that I wouldn't do, but I think make the plaza a place that will be enjoyed by a much broader segment of the population. You know, there are some other things, for instance, right near where it says restrooms, there's a little kiosk there, which moved around in the design over the different meetings I attended. And at the last meeting, we decided, let's get rid of that kiosk. You know, we just couldn't make it work out or see the need for it. So it's been an evolving thing. And as I mentioned to our commission before, I did make a statement at one of these meetings that they should keep in mind that things could change quite a lot when it comes to HLC for concept and subsequent review. So nobody's of a mind that they're locked into this design and it's not going to change. But, you know, I've appreciated the direction it's gone. There were shade structures at one point, which we just did not see fitting in. So it's gone to all trees to provide the shade. I like the idea of olive trees. Oaks can be pretty messy, but, you know, I'd be interested to hear why those are perhaps not suitable. But, you know, I think it's on the right track.
All right. Commissioner Edmonds, and then we'll go Commissioner Drury after.
Thank you.
Thank you. I too share a lot of the concerns that have just been mentioned. I don't think I could be convinced in any way to agree to the splash pad. I'm a parent and a grandparent, and it sounds like a nightmare to me. I can just see a situation where, you know, you're waiting to go into one of these restaurants and your kids are running in and out and they're wet and they're gonna, you know, just to me, my kids, if they were to see this, they might be cringing that I'm saying that, but I just, it doesn't fit. And from a practical point of view, I just don't think it's a good idea. I also don't think it's, fits in historically either. Talking about the trees, the streets in Barcelona are lined with sycamores, which seem to work there. We see them typically in our canyons and creek beds and stuff, but so Barcelona is lined with sycamores, and Burgos is the streets and their plazas are lined with mulberries. And I know mulberry isn't something that we really think of with Santa Barbara, but it sure provides a nice canopy of shade in the spring and summertime. This seems very busy when I look at this rendering, which the busyness doesn't appeal to me. Maybe it would be covered with people and so it would not be offensive. But one of the comments, at least one of the comments that we received and reviewed, talked about the lack of grass. There were some comments from people saying they didn't want the plaza changed and please not to change it. But, there were others that said, please leave some grass. And I have to say that I agree with that. We have so much hardscape and so many of us don't have lawns anymore. And so to be able to have an area where there's actual grass, that you can sit down on the lawn, and like at Alice Keck Park Memorial Gardens, that's an example. Anyway, if grass could be incorporated somehow, I would be appreciative of that. And I believe that at least part of the community would be as well. So that's it for now from me.
Okay, Commissioner Drury? Oh, maybe we'll pull him back in once.
No, I forgot to push the on button. I was talking away. I think Commissioner Lembeck's comments are quite on the money, and I've had reservations about not just the splash pad itself, but the size of it. And I think I said that in one of my questions. I do think that we need to reconsider the type of trees. I think Robert Cunningham wrote a very cogent letter about his suggestions for replacing the proposed trees. The Palo Verde evidently do have some difficulty with mildew, and I'm not sure that the disruptive nature of the silk trees sort of precludes them being used. Even though you could make a fortification around the base of each one, I think why not put something that wouldn't have potential for damage. When these projects get underway, oftentimes there's a lot of stuff put in right away. And I think it's the job of the commission to sort of maybe start taking some of that stuff away. I think I would be in favor of not pursuing the splash pad. I would also be in favor of changing the types of trees. I would think Mr. Cunningham would be a person to talk to. He's very, very knowledgeable about native trees and what thrives in this climate. I think that the curve of the pattern in De La Guerra Street itself, it actually precludes it. It's like a visual barrier, even though it's at ground level, a visual barrier between the top of the plaza and the De La Guerra house itself. I would like to see that, at least I'd like to see a concept review, drawing of that taken out. And I am absolutely convinced that De La Guerra Street should not have any traffic on it except for service vehicles at certain times of the day from Anacapa to State Street. I think that should be no vehicles whatsoever, except as needed. Obviously, emergency vehicles. The plaza will also be a good bit wider because you're only going to have access to the backs of buildings, is my understanding, service trucks. And so there's only going to be a one-way. It's not going to be a parking and a vehicle right away. So that's going to widen the plaza considerably. What else was there? And I have to also tout Commissioner Howes, because he's the one that came up with extending the paving in the El Paseo across the street towards City Hall. And I think that kind of tie-in would be would be a more formal way of including the Casa de la Guerra with the plaza itself. Some kind of a visual tie-in, whether it's a certain paving that matches the decomposed granite. That's what I would like to see. And I think there's a misunderstanding about the art nodes. It's not about painting from those art nodes. It would actually be, I think it was suggested we have some sort of a competition for those nodes. They would be delineating historic parts of why the plaza is where it should be. I also think there should be a compass rose embedded in the plaza itself. And as far as grass goes, I think we all would love to see it grassy. I don't think that it's feasible given the drought that we're going to be in very soon, if not now already. And the maintenance of the lawn, it would be a lovely thing to have. But I think we have to make up for it with proper shade trees on both sides of the plaza. And I guess that's my comments for.
Right. Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that I really appreciated the presentation. It does what a presentation needs to do at this level of concept review. It really clarifies what some of the concepts are for the general public and for the HLC. So I appreciate that. When I listen to this and think about this, one of the things that comes through is that historically, this has been a plaza, and that's what it should be, not a playground and not even a park. It's a plaza. So I'm going to come down on the side of people who are not thrilled with the splash pad, because I think it's not in keeping with the character of a plaza. That's a playground element. Secondly, because I'm in California, where water is so precious, so scarce, and so political, to have a fountain, and I recognize that there will be ways to explain it doesn't use that much water, but it forces you into having that explanation. It forces you into having conversations about features that it detracts from what you're trying to accomplish overall. It just becomes a source of contention and constant debate. I do like the stage and arcade, because I think that supports the role of a plaza. There's a difference between trying to program specific activities to say, you go stand here and do this, you go stand there and do that, between that kind of program specificity and simply providing opportunities for the community to use the plaza as they do in an ad hoc manner, whether it's a political meeting or a festive occasion like Fiesta. So I think that's a very strong part of the overall concept. I also think that if the plaza winds up with a hard surface, that hard surface must play a big role in explaining the history of the plaza. And by that, I mean things like a compass rose or medallions that reflect the heritage of what makes Santa Barbara such a special place, and tells a story from not just the arrival of the De La Guerra family, but from the Chumash to the present. I think that kind of thing can be worked out in various forms of public art embedded in a hard surface. If it becomes a hard surface, that hard surface has to do a lot of work, not just for people to stand on, but to tell the story of the plaza. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Uli.
Thank you. I want to go from the very broad to the very narrow, if I can. First, I realize and want to acknowledge all of the great work of a lot of people to get this concept to HLC, recognizing that that is not an easy task. So I appreciate everybody putting their brain power to this. From the very broad, I am very supportive of closing the street and improving the plaza so that the street and the plaza actually become one. And generally, like the layout that we're seeing. So as I go a little narrower in my comment, I'm going to be a little more critical. I do agree with most of Commissioner Lindvik's assessment of what we're seeing. and would hope that the material palette be simplified significantly. I think I counted 6 different materials, and it just seems to me to be too much. Using my analogy of the baked potato, which I like to go to a lot, you know, if you're looking for a twice baked potato, I think this one's been cooked 4 times. It needs to be, in my opinion, a much more random feeling plaza. This is very organized and, you know, very linear and very grid-like, and it's, in my opinion, too formal. It needs to be much less formal. I like Commissioner House's suggestion that the material in the arcade across the street here be extended. Maybe that is the predominant material in the plaza that unifies everything together, and then you get a couple of accent points. I like the idea of the arcade, but in my opinion, I think the arcade should really echo the adobe that used to be there. And I think it's on page 38 of this De la Guerra book. Let me get there, yeah. Page 38, there's a photograph that was submitted for the publication by Mary Louise Days that shows that adobe, and it has a very, you know, elegant porch on it, very simple, you know, not very ornate. So I think if that arcade moves forward in further development, it really needs to be simplified. Same purpose. I like the stage. I like Commissioner Dorman's assessment of that feature. So I like it. I love fountains, and of course, you look a lot of European plazas. There's a huge fountain in the middle of the thing, or at one end. You know, you often see them featured in movies where people are dancing in them or doing whatever. I'm not suggesting that that be the case here, but there's always a water feature of some sort in these plazas, and so I think it's appropriate to consider a water feature, but maybe not appropriate to use it as a toy or a play destination for kids. So I'd like to see a water feature, but not a playful fountain. With respect to landscaping, you know, this is a city asset and a city maintained asset, and maintenance is going to be a huge issue. Picking up after trees, you know, I can just see if it's an overly flowery tree that drops its blooms on that pavement, it's going to stain the pavement over time. They'll get damp. People are going to slip on them. So whatever the landscape palette winds up being going forward, it should have a low or no maintenance component to it. Because, you know, the Public Works Department is not a staff of thousands. But generally supportive of going this direction for the plaza. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners' comments? Commissioner Lundvik?
Yeah, I would like to hear other commissioners who have not weigh in on this attempt to make a visual connection between Casa de la Guerra and the new plaza, as opposed to what I see right now as a separation or turn your back on the Casa. I think there should be a greater connection. I'd like to hear other commissioners as well.
I support you in that, Commissioner Lundvik.
Other commissioners?
As do I.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think that's an idea that is fostered by the walkway out of the El Paseo to the City Hall side, that crosswalk. I think that could be extended, the width of the Casa de la Guerra, and then continued on into the plaza itself. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Commissioner Inman? Okay. It seems to be pretty universally agreed. let's talk other, I'll give my, I pretty much agree with most of what everyone has been saying. And maybe it's just because I have a ton of kids and would want to come here for the splash pad. It overwhelms my uptight historic nature. But I think that a huge part of my visual disagreement with the splash pad is the fact that it's emphasized. And having been at them, knowing that you can pretty much make them disappear if you want, if you're really trying to visually, except for the times when they're on. I could see that being worked, and maybe not at the most prominent spot in Plaza de la Guerra. I think maybe that could be reworked into it. I'm not totally against the idea of anywhere in any location having a splash pad, but I do think that the way it's done now, it's certainly it's focusing all the visual energy on it in a way that I don't think it's appropriate at all for. So the other things that I think that I would weigh in on, that have additional thoughts on, is the stage. And this view I think kind of shows some of the issues. It reminds me a bit of the arcade that is on Anacapa, that is right across from the post office, and that is starting, or that goes into El Paseo. It goes from Anacapa to El Paseo and through. It was meant to be connected to, over time, as well as other things developed, and so that you would actually have a full arcade to walk in the shade under as a public, sort of a public amenity and service. In this case, it seems sort of divorced from everywhere else. And it's not connecting to. Visually, it's similar to what the arcade that's going on in the with the City Hall. But I think part of the problem I have with it is it's an arcade that just got started and stopped. And there's no hope for it to ever grow in any direction, because obviously you've got City Hall there and you've got the News Press building. So I think form-wise it needs to be resolved a little differently. And I think looking at the Adobe or other things would be a great way of trying to get inspired and looking at potential other forms in which it could take. I do think location-wise, it seems to be the most logical and best location. It does only allow for performance on basically half the plaza, but the plaza's also gotten a lot bigger than it was because it's expanded and taken up some of that road. So, so I think that I think it makes sense location-wise. I think it's just a matter of the actual design of the structure. And then I agree with all the other comments about busyness and other things. And connecting as well to the Casa. One of the things I thought was seems to be worth discussing, and I don't think we're going to all agree, but I think worth discussing in particular are the lack of grass or having grass, to have grass or not to have grass, and then the fountain discussion as well. I think that as has been stated, simplifying the plaza and having a big, strong, and I think that, early on as well, in the 1920s, some of the proposals had these massive, ornate, things that you would find in Europe quite frequently, fountains, and not that we have to go that direction at all, but also of note for discussion is in El Paseo, the little piece of lawn that's very small, but also kind of sets off that courtyard as a long piece of lawn, but it's not very much lawn, and then as well as having fountains within it. So I did want to ask about that, and obviously when they don't water it, it dies and looks ugly. But I thought that would be worth part of the discussion of both in the fountain and lawn, and there seems to be some disagreement. So, any thoughts? Let's take lawn first.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I'd like Mr. Hess to weigh in on the lawn discussion. It was I think it was a hard-fought discussion because all of us like a nice green lawn, and Mr. Hess maybe could enlighten us those meetings long ago.
Yeah, let's open it up into a question then to you, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Thank you, Commissioner Drury. This did go round and around, and people are passionate on both sides of it. The challenge really ends up being, what do we want as a community long term? Do we want to put something in that ends up just needing to be constantly repaired? So I checked in with Parks and Recreation in terms of the length of time it takes for a really large event such as Fiesta. How long does it take to repair it so that it can be walked on and used again? And the gist of it is it takes about 10 to 12 weeks for recovery of a larger event when you've got a lawn like we do currently. So in addition to all the water issues and all of that, the challenge is that when you put something in that you then have to just basically restrict the public from using after an event, seems counterproductive. It seems like that's not the direction that we want to go to for a space that we want to have basically facilitate activity. We don't want to restrict it. So it is definitely a contentious issue, but we really felt like coming down on the side of it doesn't make sense for where we are as a community to put it in, and what are the other options that we can do to soften the space.
Okay, thank you. Yes, were Commissioner Early, were you gonna?
Yes,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think Vice
You look like you wanted to say something.
saw Vice Chair House is wiggling his lips, so he was going to hop in there. But personally, if we go back to Commissioner Dorden's assessment of a plaza being a plaza, I don't know of any plaza that actually is a lawn plaza. I'm sure there are some out there that I'm not thinking of. But, you know, we have wonderful parks in the city that have huge expanses of lawn that can be used. And I just see that lawn has constantly been an issue for Parks and Rec to keep in a nice condition. And typically it's in an ugly condition. And so frankly, I wouldn't, I could go either way, but wouldn't promote putting a lawn of any significance at this location.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner House and then Commissioner Lendick after.
I would have to agree entirely with that because, you know, we're trying to simplify this design. And I think just putting a little postage stamp of lawn in there doesn't help. And I visualize, you know, what it looks like after Fiesta and during the drought, not watering it. I think it's just unsightly. And you know, lawns are nice. We all love them, but this is not the place for a lawn.
All right, Commissioner Lendick.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's, you know, you look at the period of significance and there weren't lawns. You don't see Casa de la Gara with a lawn, you know, in it. And and I think they are the ones who have made the most effort at preservation and being honest with what they've developed. I don't see a lawn being appropriate here.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So everyone's good with killing the lawn. All right. So that's good. Fountains. I did want to bring up the fountain idea. It seems like there's pros and cons. Any other additional direction? Obviously, they changed the fountain or substituted a splash pad. So there is a water element to the site. Thoughts on just a fountain, Commissioner Early?
I agree with you about the splash pad. You know, they can disappear. You know, that splash pad could be in the rectangle of those 4 art dots in the middle of the plaza and can be completely invisible until it's on. And, you know, it's turned on for certain periods like the summer and turned off in the winter or however it's managed. But if it disappears, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Other water talk?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Edmonds and then Vice Chair House.
Okay, I'll give you a lawn, you give me, no, a fountain. I would be good with a fountain, but I'm still not good with the splash pad. The splash pad is just to steal Commissioner Lenvick's words, it's modern. And I find it very unappealing here. Now in Portland, where they've got this water feature and my grandkids love to go there, you know, and climb through it and stuff. I don't know, somehow it worked there, but not in the middle of this plaza. It doesn't work for me, or at the end of the plaza. What I would prefer to see, I guess, is to get rid of the art focal point and to get rid of the splash pad and have a fountain, you know, in the middle. Yeah, so I'd be good with that, but a more traditional fountain.
All right. Other fountain weigh-inners? Commissioner Drury?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Actually, Commissioner Drury, if you can hold up 1 second. Vice Chair House, I told them first.
Yes.
Okay.
Hold your horses there, Commissioner.
I'll do it.
I guess I'm ambivalent about a fountain. On the one hand, I see them as an attractive nuisance, and the city might see it as a liability if it's filled with water and there's kids running around and stuff. I think they're beautiful. I think the one in El Paseo is very attractive. As far as I know, that's not original. That was a later addition, if I recall correctly. You know, getting rid of those two elements, the splash pad and the art focal point, and just having a fountain in the center would be very attractive and I think very traditional. Another concern I have about the splash pad, and this is part of the overall design that we haven't seen yet, is the nighttime lighting. And I do not remember whether or not there was concealed lighting in the pavement that uplit jets of water shooting up, which obviously is totally going in the opposite direction of traditional. So yeah, that's why I'm ambivalent about it. I'm not sold on either the fountain or the splash pad.
All right. Commissioner Drury?
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner House and Commissioner Lenvick. I think that, you know, it's the old adage, less is more, and I think this should be a plaza. I think Commissioner Jordan has said that a couple of times, and we don't need to tart it up. It's a beautiful location. It's surrounded by beautiful buildings with the mountains behind, and I think it should be a place where people can go and not have to sort of look for stuff to do, because that they've done the stuff and now they're in a place of, we hope, peace, where people can just sort of sit around and enjoy, you know, resting their feet from shopping. Just a place in the middle of the city without traffic, without noise. I would, that's sort of the way I'm going as far as the idea of this plaza. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Jordan?
Just a comment about a fountain, which would be appropriate in a plaza in a way that a splash pad is not a plaza feature. But I'll also make one comment about the challenge of doing a fountain in California. Most of the time when you design a fountain, you design it thinking that it's filled with water, or that you imagine it with water in it. There will be times, droughts or periods, where there's not water in any fountain. So the fountain has to be a sculptural entity that would look attractive with no water in it and look really come alive with water in it. But we have to realize there's going to be times when there's no water in that fountain. And the design of the fountain, the designers of the fountain need to take that into account.
Good point.
Mr. Chair, I have one more thing to ask Mr. Hess. I don't want him to go home early. Could you please explain the art nodes?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Commissioner Drury. This is presented as an idea for options. We know that public art is going to play a big role in this plaza in some way, shape, or form. The idea here could take on a number of levels. It could be parameters set by, say, the advisory committee, where it can be this size with these materials, but maybe not. Maybe we give artists free reign, but this is the story that we want these art nodes to tell. Do we want it to be a walking discovery? Do we want it to, do we want to use technology to have a walking tour where people can learn about what they're walking on through a guided tour on their headphones. I mean, there are so many different ways that we can approach this, and I've reached out to a number of folks in these last couple of weeks, especially both the Chumash as well as the Santa Barbara Arts, and there are so many people that want to have an expression within this plaza to tell stories and to tell their history and to have a representation. And so we're trying to figure out what is the balance, because if it needs to be appropriate and it needs to be within a good context. So this is an idea. They would be flush. It would probably not be lit, but it would be flush, and they would, I think what will be in them will evolve, just as this commission is indicating. There are a number of different ways that we can go with this.
Thank you, Mr. Hess.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Drury. I did want to throw in one more comment that I was thinking about while this was, and a lot of the other comments were sort of tying to this. So coming from the design perspective, when I go to design something that's of a certain language, that's of a certain piece, usually what I do is I start by studying things like it, right? And you look at all the great examples that are very similar to something, and just by drawing it, just by looking at it very carefully, analyzing it, you start to see how it works and how it functions, and how the best examples that you're hoping to emulate or play off of our work. It seems like some studies of specific or the best plazas is part of this. Will help to lead to some of those aha moments and ideas and organization principles, and things like the busyness of the trees or those other things. Those will start to go away, because as you study a series of some really great ones, you'll see that none of them have these rows of trees, or none of them have this or that. And so I think that'll help to sort of simplify down to sort of the essence of what the plaza should be, this plaza should be. And it will help the designers on that side of things to really to dive in and to be able to also say, well, I've looked at this and this and this, and this is why we're going in this direction, in a very strong, direct way, which will give sort of guidance, I think, to the design. So I just sort of on a general note, I wanted to state that, because I think that might help to weed out some of the things that are superfluous or don't necessarily aren't needed in the plaza. So that's just another little side note. Is there anything else that anyone in particular wants to discuss? Otherwise, I wrote down a whole bunch of these comments. I wanted to sort of try to summarize. Yes, Commissioner Woolley.
Not to add any of that complexity back to this thing we're trying to simplify, but a lot of these plazas in Europe have some little stand here or there, it's a taco wagon or whatever it is, that, helps to provide things to people who are on the plaza. So I would hope that, provisions are made in the surface to plug that kind of thing in. And I'm not suggesting it happen every day of the week, all year round, but have the ability to be a spontaneous kind of support to the plaza.
Just when we got rid of that kiosk, you bring it back.
Now there's 7 of them.
I think
plug them all
also
in.
should be kept in mind that there will be underground utilities for Fiesta, so there will be that infrastructure.
Yeah, they're definitely building. Mr. Hess, I bet you're going to say yes. We're going to be doing that.
If I may, Chair Grumbine, that's actually a perfect lead-in, which is it's really just about the material choices that we need to really consider, in that we have looked at a lot of plazas internationally. We have an ADA compliance issue that we are going to absolutely need to pay attention to. So extending, for instance, the walkway from El Paseo, none of that walkway is ADA. Using that material is extremely challenging for that. So bringing it into a long walking area is going to be very tough. But finding a material that looks like it, that could be flat and compliant, is what we're going to be after. Additionally, which is what Commissioner House just brought up, what you don't see is everything that's underneath this ground. There are a ton of utilities that we need to pay attention to. And one of the reasons that the material choices are going to be so important, and we really want your feedback on this, is because we want it to look in 30 years as it does today, or excuse me, 30 years as it does when it's finished. Today, it looks like it's been torn up and repatched and torn up and patched, and none of it matches. So we need to work with, we need to figure out what materials are going to be able to be taken up, utilities fixed, and put back in such a way that it looks as if nothing has happened. And that is a tall order, but I think we can do it.
All right. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to try to attempt a summary of a number of the comments. And obviously, it's not covering everything, but at least the key ones that we're hitting on, or multiple commissioners were hitting on. So, in all, to start off with, this is we very much appreciate all the work that's gone into this. We know it's a huge amount of effort, and it definitely has been enabled us to actually give a good concept review, which is super important to actually get good feedback. So we thank all of you that have been working so hard at this for so long, and Vice Chair House and Commissioner Drury as well, and Commissioner Vena, who first started off with it as well. And all those who have been working on the project. One of the comments, one comment is the period of significance is an important starting point to frame these design moves, and so that needs to be looked at as a major design guide. So the splash pad is most commissioners felt it was not appropriate, and there was, with some commissioners, thinking it might be appropriate if it was visually disappeared. But as a use, it's not a typical or traditional use for a plaza. The art nodes seem to be, well, I guess we can just talk in generalities. Generally speaking, the geometry and the regularity of the trees, and the number of the trees, the art nodes, the complexity of the paving pattern, all the complexities and regular geometries seem overly, I don't want to say ornate, but they need to be fewer and simpler. They need to be simplified. The connection to daily, oh yes.
Would you say less formal an arrangement?
Yeah, less formal and less regular, or less in number, I would say. Less in number and less formal. What's that?
More random was a comment made before.
Yeah, okay, and more random.
Or perhaps more organic, I don't know.
No, I don't want to go to organic. That
Okay.
will open up a whole can of worms. A stronger connection to Casa de la Guerra is needed, and especially the current paving paving pattern is not connecting, or the paving and the way the paving connects to the casa is not increasing the connection; it's decreasing the connection to the casa. The trees need to be more traditional in type in general. That was the general comment and feel, with potentially oaks or olives thought of as suggestions, and fewer, as mentioned before. The grass was pretty universally agreed that grass is not needed and not wanted in the plaza design. The curved pattern in particular, the curved pattern in between the Casa de la Guerra and De la Guerra Plaza of the paving should be changed. Elements such as compass rose, as well as historic elements such as plaques, etc., should be thought of and brought into the plaza design. And on a note for that, One note which I forgot to bring up, but it might be interesting to look at, is to look at where the footprint of the original courthouse, original city hall was, which is basically where the big circle is as the art focal point. There might be some ability to tie that in as a footprint, as some or some point of interest for what used to be there, and then as tie that history. That may be a thing worth, or that is a thing that's worth exploring. Let's see. In general, everyone was very much in favor of raising the elevation of the road to meet the plaza and have everything equal out, and that we saw as a very good design move. And the stage. So the stage placement seems appropriate, but the overall design needs to be reworked. And a suggestion of looking at the adobe that was originally there as a potential source of inspiration, and to examine a design that works with that, or looks at that. The fountain, there was some commissioners felt the fountain, I would say all commissioners thought that a fountain would be appropriate in Plaza de la Guerra. However, also understanding the water issues and constraints of the city and California, if there was a fountain proposed, it should also be it should also look good in times of drought where it is not full of water, and so that needs to be taken into consideration if a fountain is proposed. We already covered the simplified, less formal. Covered the arcade. Landscape palette. Landscape palette should be low maintenance, and we discussed a little bit of what and more traditional, but also low maintenance. And the other factor, which we just recently discussed, was the amenities and connections and all the infrastructure that's needed for the spontaneous life throughout the year of the plaza. So,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Drury?
yeah, just to reiterate, please mention something about the traffic pattern on that block of De La Guerra, and also Bob Cunningham's ideas about the trees, the appropriate trees for the plaza. Thank you.
Okay, and I think that our traditional tree comment. And I should say, we can add the one piece of looking for trees that for long term won't cause potential upheaval and other things like that have potential sidewalk and long term maintenance upheaval. I think that the traditional part, Bob Cunningham's suggestions do. I guess we can roll that in, and that to look at Bob Cunningham's suggestions as potentials for the traditional tree palette. And then in terms of the vehicle circulation, I think everyone was in favor of closing off the street and only for particular access and support, and not for regular traffic.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair House.
Not that we need to add anything more to the comments, but I should point out that an important consideration for the tree choice is that it not be too dense, and it allow for viewing and appreciation of the surrounding architecture. And that was a point Mary Louise Days made. And I think that's the reason that the Palo Verde was chosen, because it's rather lacy. So an oak tree might be too dense, a sycamore might be too dense. So that's an important consideration in the tree choice.
Okay, so I'll add that in as well in the tree portion, that the trees don't make a major visual barrier between the architecture and the plaza. And is there any other comments that want to be added? Did we cover it pretty well? For a first concept review, obviously there's going to be more. This is not just the only thing. So
and there's just 1 minute till you have to go.
Yeah, that's right. So Commissioner Jordan, did you have anything that you were going
I
to?
hope in the future, we could see something about lighting.
Oh, yes, okay. You beat Commissioner House to that. Yeah, so we'll add that in for lighting, the lighting strategy to start coming before us as well. And I would say one more thing is on this next round is some more view from the person walking around as well. So to actually have views from De La Guerra, Casa de la Guerra looking out, from News Press Building looking back, just sort of views in that way. Because I think that's going to be super important for this big picture direction as well, and understanding what those trees and the canopies are going to be like and what that space is really going to be like. So, all right. Anything else? All right. So does anyone want to make a motion with those comments?
I will make a motion for an indefinite continuance with those comments.
Second.
All right. Motion by Vice Chair House, second by Uli. Under discussion. Any discussion? All right. In that case, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Hetty Roisel. I'll begin the roll call vote. We'll start with Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Jordan, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Edmonds,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel, absent. Commissioner Lendick,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahan, absent. Chair Grunbein.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
With that, we will end. We shall see. Adjourn. All right.
Another
meeting is
delightful
adjourned.
afternoon. Thank you.
That's right.